Let's get witchy and weird. Hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of Weederlight. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. All right, friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. Oh my gosh, I am just twirling, schwitzing, doing all of the things. I'm giddy. Like, I feel giddy, which is so funny because this is my real life friend. So this is interesting that this is coming up, but I love her so much. And I just am so excited for her to be here today. So without further fucking ado, introducing one of my fabulous, radiant friends, Sara Jane Wellock, who is the creatrix, the founder, the president of Ladybug Productions. And Ladybug Productions is so fucking cool because it is an umbrella, and under the umbrella, there's so many amazing healing modalities and things that Sara Jane teaches, embodies, such as the fabulous living blog, Caress, and Access Consciousness. I'm obsessed with her because of these things, but she's also a great friend, and she also is someone, and if you've heard the podcast before, and you've heard me like bring on friends that do this work, I'm really about people doing the work and embodying the tools, and we'll talk, like Sara Jane and I will probably talk about this, but we did, many programs together, and I just saw her doing the damn thing. And I just was so blown away because she was fucking committed to the work. And so that's why I'm like, oh, we got to talk about that too. So without further ado, hi.
Hi. And can I just acknowledge, thank you very kindly.
Of course.
For having me on your amazing podcast.
Thank you.
Which I super enjoy. I've been diving in. Yes. Other people, you dive into, listen to this stuff. There's some golden sparkles in here. But just, I would also like to now acknowledge you.
Thank you.
And what you're creating. It's so amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
The podcast and all the things you're doing in the world, the coaching. And thank you for having me here today. And yeah, it's super fun to connect with a friend and spread the word about what we're creating.
Hell yeah. I am so jazzed, and we're gonna get into the deep. Like, I know we talked about this before,
Baby.
But yes. Like, we're gonna talk about the things. We're gonna probably do some practices. Yeah. And I'm signing up for a guinea pig, but the cool news is, the listeners can, though, like, I'm, kind of acting as the actor, but really myself, we could do this. Everyone could do this, with you, this practice with you, which is fucking super exciting. But before we dive into the juice, I have to acknowledge, because we laughed at this yesterday while we were doing our pre-talk, we were like, LOL. Like, the conversation around, because you and I are very similar, like point blank, but you and I are very similar in a sense where we love and feel very called to a lot of different things. And I know for me, that brought me a lot of shame over the years. Like, what's wrong with you? Pick one thing. Like, pick being a coach or pick being an actor. Like, you can't do multiple things. Like, you just can't. And it brought me a lot of agita, a lot of shame. And you're shaking your head, and I know the same applies for you. Talk to me.
It's funny to shake your head right on an audio.
I know. It's so weird.
Can't they feel me shaking my head?
You're like, come on, Erica.
No, I'm like acknowledging this 100%. Yes. I was saying yesterday, and hopefully it's not still what's happening, but for me, which was quite a while ago when I was in high school, I was told, like, you got to choose your thing, and like a lot of models also say that, a lot of modalities that we embody or that we approach or that we use or whatever also say, like, choose this. Some say go ahead and explore other things, and some say, like, this is the thing, right? Like, you got to do this one thing. And I know, like, career counselors when I was a youngster would always say, you've got to pick the one thing and do that thing, and you got to focus, and you got to go to college and choose the major and then use the major. And who does that really? For real? Like, nobody. And so and maybe hopefully it's different now. I imagine it is, but it's like, what if we get to choose all of it? Like, what if that is not a problem? Like, what if it's super awesome, amazing to, if you find yourself interested and enthusiastic, you choose it, and and then you might choose something different. But yeah, that's what Ladybug became. So I've had multiple different careers and interests. I wouldn't say like I'm very devoted, right? Like I've really taken a deep dive into those different interest modalities, careers over a long period of time. But it wasn't just one road, one path. And now I've sort of gathered them together, and I offer them through Ladybug Productions. So you don't have to just choose one thing. You can choose all the things. There's an idea in Access Consciousness. So the Living Blog and Caress, I developed. Like, those are my own little babies that have now turned into, well, Caress is very new, but the Living Blog is like a toddler at this point. I started the Living Blog actually in 2014, so it's been a while. But Access Consciousness is a model I also practice, and that was developed by Gary Douglas, he's the founder, and Dr. Dane here. And from this perspective, from an Access Consciousness perspective, they say, like, what if we're infinite beings?
Yes.
Like, what if we can just choose all of it? And what if we have that capacity and we don't have to limit ourselves anymore? So they even say, like, when you think you're just supposed to not multitask, a lot of models tell us not to multitask. They're like, well, what if you have the capacity to multitask? So what if you can do multiple things simultaneously? And they say this other thing. I don't know why this is coming to me, Erica, but
please,
I'm gonna roll with
jam.
They say this other thing about like the idea of being an infinite being. And they ask the question, like, is the body in me, or am I in the body? And from an access perspective, the body is in you because you are infinite.
Mm.
So you still get to be embodied, and you still get to ask the body and commune with the body. Like, it's not as if you ignore your body. Right. Hell no. But we also acknowledge that we have like this infinite capacity and awareness if we're willing to tap into it.
Yes.
And I know a little later we're going to do some of that, but I maybe we should just start with this other activity where this isn't actually a session, but you just expand out. So expanding out by 10, and then expanding out your fast by 20, expanding out by 100, expanding out by 1,000,000. Just noticing that you have that capacity to expand your awareness, to expand your energy. Mm. How woo-woo can we get within the first 5 minutes of our podcast?
I fucking love it. I'm like, let's get witchy and weird.
Okay, you've come to the right place for witchy and weird. Ladybug Productions is all about witchy and weird.
Hell yeah.
I'm sure you know.
Yep. And this is perfect because some episodes are quite scientific, like some, which is great. That's what I want from this podcast, is that for some people, they need the science episodes. For other people, they need this. For this one, let's get fucking weird.
Okay,
so if you're listening and you're like, guys, I want which a lot of this actually is science behind, but if you're woo, listen in. Let's get weird.
Let's do the woo and the first name woo, the last name woo. Woo.
Hell yeah.
And the original definition of weird was of destiny, fate. There was something faith, destiny, and something possibility. It was with me a moment ago, and then I lost it. But this original definition of weird was like way more expansive than our current definition that we all use, where we're like, oh, I don't want to appear weird, right? Or I mean, that's not true for you and not true for me, but a lot of people might have fear of being weird. Spirit, faith, and destiny was the original. There it is. the original definition of weird. So what if that's what we're actually tapping into?
Damn. Damn.
Damn.
Yeah, that's also like, that's like, I just want, we could like spend time, we won't, but like, holy shit, we could spend time unpacking like, isn't that interesting that that was then deemed bad?
Yeah. Right. And what if
Yeah.
there is no right or wrong? And what if there is no good or bad? What if there's just action and creation?
It's so good.
Right. I'm getting like
Yeah,
little
like,
chills. Yeah.
wow. I want to scroll back really quick because I want to stay in the flow of where we're at, but I also am like, hold on, I want to highlight, but I'm not going to highlight too hard, if that makes sense. So baby highlights, then come back to flow. Is that cool?
Of course.
Cool.
Do your thing. I love your dance. It's beautiful.
Well, you know, a little dance. So
yeah.
The highlighting that I wanted to extract with the doing it all thing.
Yeah.
Like that, for me, I think I'm still unpacking it, to be completely honest. Like, I think there's a piece of me that's still unpacking the shame and all of that. And
yeah.
Right. And what I heard with you, you didn't say this explicitly, but what I'm getting at and why I think we're attracted to this is I think it reminds us of our aliveness.
Heck yes.
Right?
Hell yes.
Oh, please,
yes.
You can go there. But yeah,
I know I can.
I think I cursed like 7 times in your intro.
Yeah.
I'm like, Sara fucking Jane.
I'm starting to do like the cartoon version and like change my language. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I'm with Erica.
You're Erica. Yeah, come on.
Okay. Yes. Hell yes.
Yes. Yeah, but I think for us, it really, especially, and we'll jump into this too, but like, because of the work that we've done, which is living a desire-filled life, or, desire, hell yeah, right? Like, I think that's why it's like, this thing, like this modality is up for me right now, and I'm gonna really jam with this, and it makes me feel alive. And then sometimes it ebbs and flows, and it's cyclical, and so I just love that permission. If anyone's listening and feels like, oh, I feel shame or bad, I don't want to get too much into this because it's like, this isn't my jam. But even in business, it's like there's so much shame if you don't niche down. And I'm like, like that gives me the creepy crawlies because it takes the life out. So I just wanted to frame and highlight that conversation that like it could just be as easy as you're following your turn on your aliveness, the spark that feels sparkly.
Yes, please.
Yes,
please. And and all those people and places that told us we had to only choose one thing, and then we had to lock ourselves to that thing, whatever it was. If it was a career or a relationship or an idea about how our lives are supposed to play out, or, I know, and I'm not talking any smack about religion, but religions say it too often, like just choose this path. You've got to stay with this path. But it's, I wonder for me and my body, my being, is that really cultivating consciousness? Is that really being, like you said, alive in the moment, in the present, with whatever's coming my way? Okay, this is coming my way. I'm going to act accordingly. Okay, now this is up in my world. Well, what tool, technique, art, practice would I like to choose for this? And what if it's not wrong or bad to have lots of tools or arts from which to choose?
Yes. Oh my God, I'm like, I don't know if you feel this, but like the teasing energy of like wanting to go into the tool. Like, I'm like, oh yeah, like, oh my God. But I'm stopping her. So I think I'm adding to the energy of like, stop, go. But I'm like, I have to highlight this. I want to go like really ham on this topic. We'll see where we go. Maybe now, maybe later, but I want to spend time on this. We talked about this yesterday about like your practice. We don't need to talk about this now. Maybe we talk about this post ritual and exercise. However, I have to frame your aliveness when I was talking about desires. And you were like, yes, please. Yes. Like you became alive. So like, can you talk, I'll say this, a huge part of my work is helping clients, do a lot of things, but I'm thinking this morning I had a client and we were doing desire work. Like, what are your desires? Is it safe to have those desires? Like, just desires. So can you talk to us about how you've like created safety or come this far in, and we'll talk about your journey as well, but like, how the fuck do you have such a juicy relationship with desires? And how does one start to do that? Because you're like a really good role model for that. Like, you don't fuck around with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I developed trust in myself and in my desires. And forgive me if I become an infomercial for access consciousness. That's not my, or anything, honestly, that's not my intention. And yet they're things I'm into. So I talk about them a lot, my personality. Access consciousness also helped me cultivate trust. Access talks about a feather touch awareness.
Yeah, totally.
Across your face, right? Feather touch. And what if we listened? And then it doesn't have to be the brick. I actually remember, I'm going to name her because she's so fabulous. I can't believe I'm still naming her, but because I know, like, I've been naming her since like the 4th grade. Oprah Winfrey, right? I remember Oprah talking about the universe. Did she say it that way? I don't know, but speaks to us in whispers or something like that. There's a light touch.
Yes.
And then when we don't listen, it becomes more firm. So it becomes like a brick wall falling on our brains or something. You know what I mean?
Completely.
So like Access also references that in a similar way about really being aware, cultivating awareness, cultivating consciousness, and listening to the feather touch. And so I think there's a tendency to judge that. We'll get like a little thing of awareness and then we'll judge it. Or we'll think we're afraid of it or something. We may not trust that we get to follow it and explore it, see what happens. And yet every time you do, in my humble, not so humble experience, there's something to learn, there's a way to grow. And often there's like an amazing, interesting, wonderful transformation at the other side of it. At the other side of listening to that feather touch. Does that make any sense? I know I'm like combining multiple sensory things here.
No, I'm living.
Like, so I get a sense of something, a desire or some kind of inclination. And when I actually listen, when I choose it, it creates. So what if everything's a choice? And what if choice creates? That's kind of from where I am operating. And I wouldn't say I always had that trust in myself, nor did I have trust in the universe or the multiverse or consciousness. But that has developed over time. That's developed through multiple practices, including, I think I mentioned it yesterday. I know we talked about caress, including that particular practice. That helped me cultivate a trust for myself, for having my own back, which then initiated an awareness of, wow, the universe has my back too, which I was not always that way, right? I used to be like, yeah, whatever, hippies, talking about the universe having my back and consciousness. And I don't know about that. What about racism? What about this? That's not having your back, like not about me, but you know what I'm saying? Like I would look at the ills of the world and think that consciousness does not have anybody's back. And then there's been a more recent, over the last few years, awareness about the beauty of the universe, of consciousness, and how it really is holding us.
Whoa.
All of us.
Whoa. That is like really powerful in so many ways, because I think you voiced a lot of our ick around the universe has your back.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
everything's fine.
Yeah, like I eat kale, which like God bless, but like I eat kale and you know what I mean?
Like, cooked kale is okay. Raw kale, I mean, yeah, but cooked kale, I can get down with cooked kale.
God bless kale. I'm such a fucking hater on kale, but you know what I mean? Like
I know what you mean.
You know the crunch. Like I think I always got agita. Like, and I'm sure this happened to you too. Like I was attracted to these communities because I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. And then I was like, ugh, like there is a fucking underbelly of like the problems in the world. Like how can you you say the universe has your back.
Yeah.
So you really voice something there.
And what I also love, I enjoy models and practices and people that are saying, like, here's some interesting information. Here's a practice. You might want to attempt it, work it, play it. But, don't trust me, trust yourself. Like,
yes,
go explore this. I can assist you if you choose me to assist you, to facilitate, to help that. I'm sure that's true for you and your clients, I imagine. And it's like, trust you. So for me, when I hear that, and that's, I try to say those kinds of things, I am the invitation for that, or I do my best to be the invitation for that when I'm doing the living blog, when I'm doing Caress, when I'm doing this practice of access consciousness that Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane taught, they teach. Like I'm like, yeah, I may have some interesting ideas and feedback for you, and you get to trust you.
Yes.
So for me, I get less of the nausea when I'm involved in a community that's a fundamental baseline awareness that we're all trusting ourselves.
Yes.
And
it's not you're the guru.
Right. I mean, I love a teacher. It's fun to have a teacher.
Same.
I've had so many teachers. We have, right? We're like, teacher,
love it.
Guide me, show me. I want to know. Oh, this looks interesting, right? And it's like the teachers that are conveying that you have your own knowing are the ones that I most resonate with a teacher like that these days.
Same. And I really try to practice that in my work, because I never want to be
undermined.
Yeah. Like I really try to empower people and not have them rely, because I've been in that position before and it feels fucking horrible.
Yeah.
And you feel, like completely disempowered, out of control. And so often I really try to have awareness of, okay, but what do you think? This is a co-collaboration. This is us doing magic together. It's not just me and you're taking it and you're regurgitating out into the world.
Exactly. What do you know?
Right.
Yeah. And someone that can help you know what you know. Oh, baby.
Damn.
And that includes desire. So I think, often when we talk about desire, we hear desire, that can be like it's like alarm bells go off or something, and where it's like, oh, I better shut this down, or this is wrong, or this is bad.
Yes.
And what if it's like, oh no, what's that desire? What's that feather touch? Let's follow that. What do you know?
That's what I wanted to frame. Thank you. Because I'm like, I could jam out in 27 directions with you. So I'm so glad you brought me back. Because I'm like, and then, so like you just hit me so good. Thank you. That's exactly what I wanted to bring to light, to highlight, was that. Because so often it feels irrelevant. Like the world is burning on fire. Who the fuck cares that I desire a macaroon for lunch? You know what I mean? Like I always use that example. It's so dumb, but it's like just so, you know what I mean? But like
I'm digging that example.
But like it feels like that's fucking, I want to hear your take on it. Like,
yeah,
it feels, like so irrelevant. The world is burning. Who cares? And also, like you said, and A Course in Miracles says this too, and I always, use this quote, is the voice of the soul is the voice of the soul is a soft whisper, and the voice of the ego is a loud thunderous roar.
Ooh.
Right?
Lay it on me.
Like, yes.
Yeah. So yes. Wow, that just took me to a whole other dimension. So wait, let me
unpack the first part. Okay, let's first part,
please.
and then we'll go to second part. Okay, so first part, I love this. First part is where I'm like, yes, is so often, right? So desires can kind of be like a topic for so many people, because it's like, what the fuck do you even mean? And well, this is kind of like a three-parter. What the fuck do you even mean? okay, then I know I have it. I know I want it. How the fuck do I go about having it, asking for it, speaking my truth? And then there's another component. I mean, there's probably more, but I'll give voice to these three of why is that important? So often I hear, my life is fine though. Like, why am I going to chase this? There's not a trust in ourselves that like we should trust it. It's like, oh, this is, again, since it is a feather touch so often, it's
Yeah.
easy to blow it off and be like, that's irrelevant. I'm not worthy. Like, there's so many fucking stories why we cast it off.
I love what you said too about the macaroon for lunch, because it's like, is that really relevant? And to me, yes. Because like, what if it starts with actually listening? What if it starts with listening to you and your body? What if our bodies have wisdom? What if we get to commune with our bodies, and when we commune and trust our bodies, we can trust the greater universe, multiverse. So yeah, the macaroon and the world is burning, and yet what if just having that awareness of, oh, this is what I'm choosing to eat right now. I mean, I don't want to make it like crazy significant. And yet there's something really to that. There's something to the simplicity of asking the body. How often do you actually ask and when are we ever taught like to ask the body, what do you desire? And then listening, and then choosing the macaron for lunch, even though the world is burning. And what if that is it small? What if that step towards awareness and towards our body's wisdom can contribute to more consciousness everywhere? That might be a little much, like that might be a big jump for some people, but to me there is a correlation between the simple awareness, the feather touch, listening to our bodies, trusting ourselves to care for our bodies, and then noticing how that might impact our own lives, and then the greater we'll say good.
Yeah. Yeah. You hit it, because if I didn't live the experience with you, and I'll sashay into that, I'd be like, these two are fucking whack attacks. You know what I mean? Like, I'd be like, macaroons have nothing to do with consciousness. However, because of the work that you and I specifically did together, I saw that shit for real, in real time. And I was like, this is a bunch of bullshit. And then living it, my life felt like it was on fire in the best way possible. Like, it felt like magic. And there was nothing, sure, a little bit, but there was nothing crazy broad stroke happening. Like, it wasn't these big broad strokes. It was the moment to moment to moment to moment, following my gut, following my intuition, following the desire. Like, it wasn't this radical thing I did on the outside. It was following and following, following, and being in community with humans, following, following, following. I mean, I don't need to fucking tell you. We know the crazy shit that we saw, and the expansiveness and the love and the growth and all of that. So like, if I heard this, I'd be like, these two, LOL. But the fact that we both so intimately live this,
right?
There's something to be said about that.
There is. And it's funny, and I know we all do it. We call it like the work, and it is work at times for sure. It's not like always comfortable, and it's play, right? There is something really fun about the play of it all. It's so interesting because you have like such an expansive, in my experience of you as a friend, and now in this like more professional setting of talking about what we're creating on your amazing podcast, it's like you're so expansive, and I'm getting like so enrolled in all of your expansive concepts, and then I'm like wait, there was something else I wanted to unpack that you said, and I'm like following you, and you're like miles ahead, and it's amazing. I'm loving it. But there was something else too that you mentioned, other humans that are choosing this. And yeah, sometimes I don't even think of myself as a human. I'm like some weird unicorn flying out into the meadow. But yes, those feather touches, when I'm doing in caress with a very light touch to the body, the clitoris, is really distilling down touch and awareness, and that can have the ability to create greater. Yeah, there's something about distilling things down. So we've talked about both elements, right? We've talked about being aware of everything and being infinite, and also the process of the distillation, and how both of them can sort of happen simultaneously, and how nourishing they can be.
Right. I feel I just with you, I could just like jam for 4 hours. So I'm like, ugh, like we will jam, but I'm like, okay, Erica, I think it's time.
Okay.
So before it's time, because I want to dive into practice, I want to baby step us. Can you give us a baby story, and I'll kind of get us there, of how you got into this work? Then can you give us like the cliff notes of like the living blog is this, and that? Because I know what it is, but like the baby notes, and then can we do like a baby
sesh?
Yeah. Great.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll unpack that now. So talk to me, and I know we got here yesterday because I was like, oh, this is so good. It sounds like a lot of your work, especially Caress and especially the living blog, is embodiment, moving through all emotions through the body. Can you talk to us about, and then we'll go into like Caress specifically, and access consciousness and all the things.
Yes, sure.
Can you talk to us though, like, how did you get here, and what, like, the transformation of where you were and how you are now embodied?
Yes, sure. So the living blog, actually, it's a self-revelatory theater piece, essentially about reclaiming the body through erotic dance. So I write a diary entry in the morning. I read it on a stage, and then I pair it with movement or erotic movement. And then we take a break, and anyone who would like, who's in the audience, gets to either just watch as if they're coming to an amazing, spontaneous show. Everything's sort of like improvisational, and or they can actually participate. So audience members get to write, read, and move. And there's something really beautiful and transformative that takes place through that practice, which I've witnessed now in myself and countless others. The living blog came out of a trauma story. So there was a childhood sexual trauma. When I was a kid, my cousins dressed me up in my aunt's fishnet stockings and negligee, and I did a striptease for my family at a very young age. It was probably inappropriate, right? And then I would spend the next 20, 30 years obsessing about an uncle molesting me. So this was like my trauma story. And I was so attached to the story, not as if I desired to be attached to that story, but it seemed to follow me everywhere. And I seemed to recreate it in my relationships, in so many different experiences. I was like recreating a trauma story. And, I was labeled with all the things, PTSD and OCD and all of that. Post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive, lots of different things arise as a result of this trauma. So at some point I said, okay, I love art. How can I sort of like transform, reclaim this experience? So it started in California. I was working with someone named Sheila Rubin. She's amazing. And she does self-revelatory theater. So essentially you get on a stage and you give the audience a glimpse of whatever's happening in your life at the time. I started doing that and I really enjoyed it. It was an edge to push and I really enjoyed it. And one thing that I really enjoyed was like, I would be saying something that seemed so serious to me in my world, in my life, and the audience would start laughing. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a comedic value to all of this, right? And you've talked about comedy too.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
There's something there, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
When other people are laughing at your trauma drama, I mean, sometimes that's not maybe appropriate, but other times it's like, oh, what am I not noticing? Like, what else is happening here? So I remember that happening, laughs coming in, and it kind of helped me reframe whatever scenario I was playing out on the stage. And then I was like, wow, I want other people to experience this.
Yes.
I want other people to have the experience of this transformation, of this self-revelatory opportunity. So I moved from California to New York City. I was on the lookout for a new director. I worked with Judy Gold. She's amazing. I don't know if you know her. She's a comedian. She's awesome. And she did a solo performance class right here. Well, it was like Midtown. And people would come in with a story and they would workshop it from their past. And she would go over the same scene, over and over. And for me, I was coming in. We were actually in the program together at this time. I was coming in, and you and I would be like writing about what was going on in my life. And it became the living blog. I developed this little following of people that were like, oh, wow, I want to hear what's happening in Sara Jane's world. Like, what's going on in her diary entry today? And then I was like, wow, there's really something to this. I paired it with something else you and I have participated in together, this erotic movement. And then I was like, okay, this is helping me transform the traumas in my world. What kind of space could I create for others to have the opportunity to do that too? So the living blog is one of the things that Ladybug Productions offers. It's coming up, actually. We have a performance, and we're going to give your listeners a discount.
Yes.
Use code Erica, right?
ERICA, yep, in the code.
Yes, please. And you'll get a discounted ticket. It's coming up July 3rd, 7:30, Brooklyn. Be there. So you'll get to, again, you can come and just watch an amazing show, or you can come watch me do my thing, and then you get to do your thing. And it's all spontaneous. It kind of relieves everybody of the perfectionism that often enters the scene when we're doing some sort of performance piece. It's so spontaneous. I mean, I legit have written that diary entry that morning. I read it. It may be imperfect. It doesn't matter. I pair it with movement. The movement is essentially improvisational. And then other people have the opportunity to do that too. So that's one of the many things I offer. The other thing I think you mentioned, and I mentioned it earlier, was that a good explanation of?
That was a perfect. I am so glad you hit. Obviously, this is your work, so I'm so glad you shared that. But I'm also thrilled that you gave us that format, because I think it kind of, obviously we're infinite beings, but it gives us like a little wink into like our work that you and I love to share, which is art, but also moving through, and like with the erotic body, like moving through these things. And I am like so glad you shared that, because that is such a personally a fond memory. And I know I said this to you yesterday, like where we used to dance. I'm like, I feel like we never were in class together, but I just feel like you always were fucking there.
I was always there. Oh. I told you yesterday, I moved to my Chelsea apartment. I told the real estate agent, like, I gotta live by this dance studio. And he got me a place that's 4 minutes away. Now the studio doesn't exist in New York City. It's very sad. Boo-hoo. But yes, Eric and I spent a lot of time there. And yeah, I discovered that studio after diving into self-revelatory theater and having this awareness. I was, believe it or not, maybe you can easily believe it, I'm not sure. I was someone who was very still and very restrained and constricted. I remember being in a therapist's office in my 20s with my little suit jacket. I used to wear a little suit,
wow,
like Hillary Clinton, and I'd be buttoned up, and I'd have my little purse on my lap. She was like, are you going to take your purse out of your lap? Like, I think it was like maybe 4 months probably into therapy when I finally started taking my purse off my lap. Like, that was a big deal. I didn't like movement. And then I discovered through the practices I was doing and developing that it was related to the childhood trauma. I created the living blog. I had this awareness of like, moving stuff through our bodies and how that can help release it. And and you and I got into some of the same practices where we could like explore erotic movement with other amazing people. So that was happening in conjunction for me as I was developing the Living Blog. I was like exploring that studio and other places too.
I want to jump to symphony. However, is it cool before I ask a question?
Oh, yeah. And I think we were going to do like a brief moment with Caress too. So I can just get a glimpse of Caress and then dive into a symphony session. I know we're like, I can't believe how it's like, wow, there's so much to cover. We could talk
that's why I'm like,
hours.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, fuck.
And you're like, I gotta go. Okay.
Yeah, like for time purposes, I'm like, damn it. Okay. So let me ask you this briefly.
Yes, please.
And then how does this sound? I briefly ask you this question. LOL, this is my Virgo. I'll briefly ask you this. Then we'll do a little taste testing of Caress and then symphony. Does that sound good?
Yeah. What I imagined is I'll just like give you, I'll just share what Caress is for your listeners if they would like to hear about it. And then that'll be like a natural doorway to talk a little more about the symphony as well.
Hot. Okay, perfect. So to the juiciest, briefest, I hate saying brief, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes. Briefs. We can think of boxer briefs.
Yeah, exactly. Brief. How, I don't even know what the question is, but I feel called to ask, and I'm like trying to put my hand on it, put my finger on it. Yeah, I'm like, where is it? Like, how do you, so if someone's listening to this and they're like, hot damn, like, what is your, I don't want to say what is your practice, but like, how can someone start to, I'm trying to find it, like, start to play with, and if you know what I'm already asking, because you have a tendency, usually you know me, so feel jump in, like, how can people start to do embodiment work?
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like for you? And like, what does 101 mean? What does 102 mean? Like, what's the bridge?
Okay, I've got some ideas.
Fabulous.
You can help me out. Help the lady out. They could listen to your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
They could contact you for coaching.
Oh.
Right?
It's true. No, it is true.
Why not? They could come to anyone's welcome to the Living Blog. Use code Erica for your discounted tick. You can join any of the other offerings I provide. Or you can develop your own practices. Sometimes it helps. Like I said, I love a coach or a teacher that's willing to trust the client's knowing. And let's be real. Sometimes it helps to have a coach or a teacher guiding you in knowing what you already know.
Totally.
So, choose Erica, listen to the podcasts, come to the Living Blog, come to Caress. I'll talk about that now. There are other opportunities through Ladybug Productions where you can really get in touch with that. So in terms of Caress, which I'll talk very briefly, and then we'll dive into a symphony session. Caress is another offering through Ladybug Productions. It's for people with a clitoris. And we do a stroking practice together. So it came out of the pandemic. Some of us were alone in our apartments. We're like, what am I going to do?
What happens now?
What's going to happen now in terms of my sexuality? So I developed this practice. It's loosely based on an orgasmic meditation model. I thank my teachers from there. That doesn't really exist anymore, but it was an amazing practice. I'm sure there are people still doing it. It's based also on Regina Thomas Shire, her suggestion. She's the founder of the School of Womanly Arts. Regina Thomas Shire, shout out to her. She said, plan an erotic experience, have an erotic experience, and digest an erotic experience. So we do that together in Caress. And then I also follow the energy, and to which I best credit Access Consciousness. So this is not an Access Consciousness class. If you go to an Access Consciousness class with Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane and all the other fabulous people, you're not going to be like stroking your clitoris, right? This is a separate practice. I just really want to acknowledge Access Consciousness because I think they do energy and body really beautifully. So that was the other practice. Oh, there's so many, right? You don't have to choose one. You can choose all of them.
It's true.
I was going to give you a little sampler of the symphony. So Symphony of Possibilities was developed by Dr. Dane here many years ago. He basically went to a symphony in New York City and he could sense all the energy. And he started bringing that to his own world as well as his clients. And so I was trained in Symphony of Possibilities. I now offer symphony sessions. That's another option people can choose if they'd like. And I'll give you a little taste.
Yes. And I just want to put not a disclaimer, but this is for all humans.
Humans, unicorns, all are welcome.
Yes. Love it.
Honestly, I'm glad you mentioned that. I've done the symphony. Someone hired me to do the symphony on his home.
Wow.
Someone hired me to do the symphony with people in conflict. So we talked yesterday. We haven't even gotten it today because we're all over. Choose everything, right? Don't just choose one. Yesterday I mentioned I started my career in mediation, conflict resolution, conflict transformation. And so recently I was hired to do sort of like a mediation. It was a conflict situation. And I said, oh, I've got this new interesting practice. May I introduce it? They said, yes. So I used the symphony in a mediation scenario.
Wow.
So in a conflict scenario, it was like off the hook, girl.
Oh, I'm excited.
Yeah. So it can be used with animals, with inanimate objects, with homes, people, places, things. You can come for a private one-on-one session. I often do them in my backyard in Chelsea, Manhattan. There are group symphony possibilities. I'm going to be offering that, I think, next Friday. Someone asked me, like, can I include it with the class? Sure, why not? So I'll be doing a group symphony sesh. There are all kinds of opportunities, and where you can get trained formally by Dr. Dane. It requires a lot of prereqs, but yeah, I'll give you a taste.
Let's do it.
Okay, so it starts, and where are we in time? Do we have much time left, or what are we thinking?
Let's say like, is 5?
Yeah.
Is that doable?
Sure. Oh,
cool.
I'll follow the energy, but I just want to have some awareness about how much time we have left. And so the symphony typically starts with a question, and your listeners can have this in their awareness too. And even though you and I are doing the symphony now together as just a little taster, it's not just a convo between Erica and Sara Jane. This can impact anybody and everybody. It has that capacity. So it typically starts with the question: if you could receive anything from this session, what would it be? And then it's energetically co-created. So that could mean that the client, when they come to me for a one-on-one sesh, might be asleep on the table, right? That's the massage table. We typically use it. They might be asleep. And some people say you receive even more when you're sleeping. Or it could mean that we're having like a conversation. It could mean that there's some self-touch. It could mean that I'm touching you. Obviously on Zoom, it's a little different. But if you could receive anything from this session, what would it be? And you'll see me, like, if your viewers or your listeners could see us now, you're sort of like, you're looking a little curious and intrigued. I'm kind of moving my hands, which might be woo and woo. But I'm moving my hands, sort of moving the energy. Maybe you can sense it, maybe you can't. What if it's all okay? And again, to your listeners and to you in this moment, let's just give it a shot. If you could receive anything, what would it be?
And I could give an answer, right?
Yes, please.
I think alignment.
Same one.
Alignment, shedding, and grounding feels up.
You want to say even more?
It's something like being both super... No, it's not even grounding, actually.
Yeah.
It's not that. That's the wrong thing. It's being in flow.
Great. So what would it take to be in flow? And I'm just going to ask you this question. It might be kind of weird. And a lot of questions in Access do not require an answer. So I'm so glad that you did provide a response to that. But often there's a suggestion in Access Consciousness to ask questions without rushing to conclusion, computation, expectation, rejection, separation, projection, refined judgments, and decisions. So would you be willing to let all of that go? Yeah. So any judgments, conclusions, computations, expectations, rejections, separations, refined judgments, decisions, just letting that all go now, please, if you choose. What if everything's a choice? And choice creates. What else would be possible now? What energy, space, consciousness, choice, magic, mysteries, miracles, and possibilities can you and your body be? Whatever. Did something just come up?
Yeah, and I don't know. I just went bling, but I don't know what there was a hot but I don't know exactly what it was.
What if you did know?
Great.
So what is that? What can you do with it? Can you change it? If so, how can you change it? That's a set of 4 questions from Access Consciousness. I love it so much. What is this? What can I do with this? Can I change this? If so, how can I change this? And again, for that kind of question, just let go of conclusion, computation, expectation, rejection, separation, refined judgments, decisions. What else is truly possible now? I know it's kind of awkward for an audio to get quiet, right?
No, what's so funny is that, am I allowed to speak of what's coming up?
Of course.
So at first I was like, I'm cool with releasing judgment. Like, this is cool. And then I was like, had a moment and I leaned in and then I was like, I'm scared because what if people are listening and they're like, what the fuck? I'm not getting anything. And then my business hat came on.
Oh, yes, please. Bring her.
Right?
Bring it. Yes.
And then I released it. Yeah.
Oh, and then you did
release
release it. Oh.
Released it. And then you said now. And I said, what's up for me? And grief was up for me.
Interesting. So can we dive in here? We're done. We're at 5 minutes now.
God damn it. Well, you know what the Cliff Notes is? I need to get a session with you.
Yes.
And all of us do.
Come and get it. Oh, yes. So I'll just give you a quickie on, if you don't mind, on fear.
Please.
Because you mentioned fear coming up. What if fear's a lie? What if fear's a distractor? What if the fear isn't even yours? That's an interesting idea from Access. Like, we're picking up on the collective, right? We're picking up on everybody's fears. With that, you can return to sender with consciousness. And that's not like, oh, I'm sending this back. It's like kind of like returning it to the earth, like letting go of that fear. And also, fear can also, in large part, be misidentified excitement. So what if that thing that we often call fear is actually excitement? And truly, what if fears lie? Because actually, in a situation that might typically be defined as bringing up fear, we would act, right? Like, if there was an emergency scenario, you've talked about this in other podcasts. I've heard you have that capacity to just act. You can switch, right? You can be the sparkle lady and then you can be the badass. So in a situation that truly ignited fear, or that truly required you to adjust your behavior in order to act accordingly, you would get it done. You would get that job done. So what if this fear is actually excitement? I know I'm super excited to have had this convo with you.
I know. I'm like, I always say it, but I'm like, oh, I need more time. But like,
yes, please.
I'm genuinely need more time. Like,
I'm game
like
to come back anytime. I don't want to I'm like such a barking dog, like stalker person. You're gonna like have me arrested for stalking. You're gonna get an order of protection on him. But she's gonna be like, Sara Jane's trying to get on the podcast again. But I really enjoy talking to you. I really enjoy what you're doing with your podcast and with your coaching. I commend you. I thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna do the deal where I put all of your, because you give so much. You have Caress, Access Consciousness, then that's for all people. Living Blog, which is for all humans. Actually, it's contest for everything and everyone. But Living Blog, for all humans, you have so much work and work in a good way. I know we laughed about
play.
Yeah,
yes,
play. Yes, exactly. All the juice, all so the juice, much. All
Ladybug offers sorry to interrupt. So many things.
No.
Caress, the Living Blog. We have a performance coming up. Access Consciousness. I'm doing a training in less than a week. I'm giving a group symphony. I always have symphony sessions available. I also do romantic matchmaking, and I help people with their profiles. I do so many different things in the world, and people can find me at thelivingblock.net join us for the fun.
Hell yeah. I was gonna say I'm gonna put all your information in the notes, so everyone go look her up, stalk her.
Do the same for Erica. What is it?
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, share, comment,
exactly. I'm like,
do all the things.
All the things, all the stars, all the love. All the love.
Yes, please.
We're gonna add the comment, add the links at the end. Okay, but before we wrap, is there just like a little note, like a little bling, like is there a little bow on top, a little sparkle, anything else that you wanted to voice, express before we hop?
Yeah, just what do you know? What do you know, Erica? What do you know to your greater audience? I think that's been a theme of our conversation. What would it take to be willing to listen to that, or to listen? It's funny to use two senses, like the listening, and yet it's also a touch, the feather and the touch. What would it take to truly listen to that and trust it and trust you and your own knowing? And if you'd like a little extra coaching and facilitation, Erica is available at your service, as am I. We're happy to help. Yeah?
Yeah. So yeah.
Desire, turn on.
Yes.
Sparkles.
All the above. Sparkles, cackles, snacks. You know what I mean?
What was the lunch? The macaroon, was it?
Oh yeah, the lunch. The macaroon lunch. The macaroon desire. There it is. Available for all.
Yes, please.
I love you. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on.
And I love your listeners. I love everybody that's choosing this. Thank you, everybody. Yes. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you. Seriously, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today, and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.